What is up, Trailblazers, and welcome back to the channel if you've been here before, and if you've not, welcome. For today's guide, I'm going to be covering someone extremely cool, and not just because she's cold, but it's going to be our trailblazing companion, March 7th. As usual, I'll be covering all of the good stuff. I'm going to be doing kits, including traces and eidolons. I'm going to be doing build, which covers light cones and relics. And in addition, I'm also going to be doing team comps / synergy to work out when March 7th is best played and with who. And as always, if you like the content today, please feel free to leave me a like or a comment or a subscribe. And if you don't like the content, still do it anyway because algorithm. Anyway, with that said, let's get into today's guide, starting with March 7th's kit. Starting off with her basic attack, Frigid Cold Arrow. It's a normal attack, it scales off of her attack as a normal basic. It will basically do nothing for you. It is just there to serve as a normal attack, nothing more to say. Her skill, and this is the core of her whole kit in my opinion, it's the power of cuteness. It gives one ally a shield that can absorb damage equal to 57% of her defense, 760 for 3 turns at level 13. Additionally, if the ally's HP is more than 30% of their max HP, then it will also increase the chance of enemies attacking that ally. It's one to watch as it gives her some synergy with some units such as Clara, and it also lets her pick where you want to draw damage towards, so either herself as a high defense scaling character, or someone else on the team who can just tank it for you. Additionally, as you can see, the shield does scale off of her defense stat, so I mean it's a pretty chunky shield. The shield can be improved by 2 other of her traces, making it a really good skill. And so with that said, I'm actually going to start with some of those traces instead of jumping into her ultimate. Looking at her Ascension 2 major trace, it's a really good one in my opinion. It's going to remove a debuff from a target when she shields them. I have personally found this to be really helpful in my free-to-play comp because it will take a lot of pressure off of someone such as Natasha, who also has a debuff on their skill, but again, it's only locked to one person. This way, with March 7th, you can shield someone in a pinch and get them out of a debuff such as Imprison, or I think it's like Detangled, but get it off of them and then those characters can be up and running and ready to go. Her A3 also puts another turn up on the shield, making the shield now last 4 turns, so it's actually going to help her get closer to a state of more permanent uptime, because obviously she can only apply 1 shield per 1 ally per turn. Obviously, insert asterisks for things such as the speed of units and the massive skill consumption cost. To be honest, you're never really going to have a full party shield from March 7th skill, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, and that's exactly why the shield actually draws damage anyway. Moving on to her ultimate, Glacial Cascade. It deals ice damage that scales on attack for some reason. I don't know why they did that, but it does do 150% of her attack to all enemies with a 50% base chance to freeze them for 1 turn. While frozen, the enemy cannot act, and they will take dot damage equal to 60% of March's attack again each turn. On the topic of covering traces with her kit, at A6, her ultimate gains an additional 15% freeze chance. Really good because obviously freeze an enemy. I'll talk about this throughout the video, but as a shielder, her job is to reduce the incoming damage, and if she has the ability to actually freeze an enemy, you're going to prevent incoming damage altogether. Her talent, Girl Power, is really fun. After a shield ally is attacked by an enemy, she immediately counters, dealing ice damage equal to 100% of her attack. This effect can be triggered a maximum of 2 times each turn, but note that she doesn't need to be the one to actually apply the shield, so it can be really great in something like Forgotten Hall if you're picking up a lot of preservation cards, especially because this constitutes a follow-up attack. Finally, her technique, immediately attack the enemy with 100% base chance to freeze a random enemy for 1 turn. On the technique, they only take 50% of March 7th's attack as damage over time, so it's a bit smaller than her ultimate as it doesn't have AoE coverage either. Before I sum up her kit, March does get some really cool kit value out of her eidolons, so I'm going to segue straight into eidolons now. Now, it is rumoured that March 7th will appear on Jingyuan's banner, and so eidolons could be around the corner for some of us, so let's cover them. Her E1, Memory of You. Every time March's ultimate freezes a target, she regenerates 6 energy. It's actually pretty good because we can get up to 65% base chance to freeze, and so it hits quite well with AoE. Her E2, Memory of It. Upon entering battle, grants a shield equal to 24% of March 7th's defense plus 320 to the ally with the lowest HP percentage, lasting for 3 turns. I actually really like this eidolon personally. It gives some more survivability at the start of a battle without needing to expand a skill point. Her E3 and her E5 are just +2 to skill and +2 to talent as always. Her E4, Don't Want to Lose, her talent can trigger one more time each turn, and the damage dealt by the counter increases by an amount that is equal to 30% of March 7th's defense. The main reason I like this one is because it finally lets us see some defense scaling in her damage output, but this doesn't make her a DPS by any standard. Her E6, allies under protection of her shield granted specifically by March's skill, restore HP equal to 4% of their max HP plus 106 at the beginning of each turn. Some really good role utility, but I would stress that again, this doesn't make her like a healer or anything, it's just additional input, giving her some nice role compression. In summary, her skill is the main core to her kit. It provides a strong shield, a cleanse, and a taunt that allows you to direct damage where you want it to go. We get longer uptime on her shield from her final trace. Her ultimate can freeze, which is a really strong debuff. Keeping the enemies unable to attack is, like I say, a fantastic from a tank perspective because it will reduce incoming damage from enemies. All of her eidolons are decently good and increase her value. None of them are necessarily game changing, but E1 potentially reduces her energy cost for her ult, E2 has a pinch shield, E4 helps her hit more follow-ups and does more damage, and E6 gives her emergency healing for your shielded allies who are already taking less health. Overall, a very strong kit that makes her a great addition to her team, and I actually use her as my shielder. With kit covered, we're going to jump into light cones. As always, I'm going to be doing light cones in order from 3-star to 5-star. As noted in her kit, her core does come from the shield that she creates with the skill, and so that's going to be the main focus spot for her initial light cones. And it makes it very easy to pick some basic 3-star weapons, but that said, with some investment, she becomes a great freeze applicator, and I will unpack this more in a minute with relics, teams, etc. But it's just a note that March can extract a lot of value out of a lot of the preservation light cones that run high defense, and also opt in for things like hit rate, because you can get off these freezes and help give her that extra synergy by fully reducing the damage that an enemy is doing rather than having to shield it up front. So starting with Amber, this is her free-to-play option. It gives really high amount of defense for a 3-star. You're looking at 16% defense and base 330 defense, and then a further 16% defense increase if her HP falls below 50%. It's very pure shielder, and so it definitely can be improved on, but overall a very strong option if you just want to drop this on her, and it should be easy to superimpose 5 for extra stats. For 4-stars, we do have a few options. I'm going to start with Day 1 of My New Life. It gives 463 base defense with 16% defense increase. Additionally, it gives damage resistance to all allies of 8% at base, which is good as March lacks any form of AoE shielding, so damage mitigation is a great stat to have on her. Essentially, the reason you would pick up this light cone is if you want to run her as just a pure shielder. You're going high defense and you're trying to keep as much damage away from your party as possible. This Is Me is another 4-star option that does exist on her, and people do recommend it because it can give her some variability. It has very high defense, being at 529 for a 4-star, so it massively helps with the shields that she creates, and then also improves her ultimate, but make no mistake, it's not going to do anything like make her a DPS. This is more to give you that kind of variability if you're trying to build her for something such as like a freeze and you want to get a lot of damage out of that ult anyway. Finally, we have a 5-star option. It is her best in slot. It is Moment of Victory, which is Gepard's light cone, and it's luckily what I run on her because I got lucky it landed. It has a very high defense, giving her the best shielder that I can get off my mass, and the effect hit rate on it is great for her ult freeze, and the semi-taunt helps naturally keep damage directed towards her as the ally with the most defense, so she can just tank all the damage with the natural taunt being put on her, and still letting her apply shields to her allies for things like AoE and cleave without necessarily directing damage straight to those enemies. All in all, she gets the most amount of benefit from this light cone as it kind of synergizes well with all of her kit. The reason I'm not covering her as weapon as a free-to-play option is that I feel it strongly underperforms with her kit. I did run some tests basically using a 4-piece Knight of Purity Palace and 2-piece Bellabog. She was sitting at 4.1k defense level 80 with all defense main stats, just trying to see what the biggest shield I could get out of her. Those shield amounts are on screen, and specifically why I've gone to build this weapon in this way is because really the only reason you are using this light cone is if you have a very, it's not selfish, but like selfish shielder who wants to tank all damage. Obviously pick it up if you really want it, but I think she derives a lot more benefit out of the 4-star options. Segueing into relics. So let's cover relics. For relics, her main 4-piece is always going to be Knight of Purity Palace. It just works great on her. It's a 15% defense increase, but also gives her some damage absorption to the shield of another 20%. And because it's the shield that she creates, you can confer this onto that shield that allies also have from her. This is really great because, you know, if you have a 3k shield made by her, that ally is also getting a further 600 damage on top of that. So just a really nice effect. For 2-piece, we can run Belobog of the Architects. The 2-piece increases the wearer's defense by 15%, and also when the wearer's effect hit rate is 50% or higher, the wearer gains an extra 15% defense. We're going to talk about main and substats in a second, but basically using this 2-piece gives you the chance to lean into adding effect hit rate into her kit, which is going to help get those freezes off overall. It does take away from a kind of pure stereotypical defense tank, but trust me, because you have this extra 15% defense, if you do then switch over to a main chest piece with effect hit rate and some decent defense substats, then you've got the 15% extra defense from a 2-piece to kind of make up some of the difference, and so there's no real detriment to giving yourself the extra freeze while losing some of the tanking capacity. Another 2-piece that is worth still mentioning is the Pan-Galactic Commercial Express. However, it is geared towards making her a bit on the offensive side, and you typically only want to run this if you're running her alongside maybe Gapard or Fire MC in kind of a very heavy turtle comp, which I will explain in a moment does have some benefits. But, you know, if you have the facility to hit the desired effect hit rate, then absolutely you can put this on her. Her stat priority is a bit of fun, you can play around with this, but essentially the chest piece you want to run either effect hit rate percent or defense. On her feet you can run defense percent or speed, on her orb run defense percent, and on the link rope run energy regen or defense percent. But let me explain all of this real quick because obviously you might think why not just put all defense on her, and I want to explain why. So effect hit rate is really strong on her for helping her get her ultimate to apply the frozen more often. While it does lower her total defense and shield scaling, the ability to freeze will do, like I say, the ability to prevent enemies from actually attacking you, and so you're limiting the amount of incoming damage overall. Why this is important on March 7th is obviously she doesn't have any AoE shields, and so it can really help her structure how often she needs to apply shields to allies if they're not constantly being hit by too much damage that she can't keep up with. Obviously then for Link Rope, the reason we have energy regen is for the same reason. We want to be able to get that ultimate off as often as possible. This way maximizing both the output of her ultimate and the chance that it will apply frozen. Obviously defense will then be rolled as a substat, and you can either get raw defense, which is never really good, but you can get both flat defense and then you can get defense percent as substats. So you shouldn't lose too much defense by opting for either effect hit rate or energy regen if you choose to. So with Kit and Lightcone covered, you have the knowledge to obviously choose if you want to play March 7th as just a pure defense scaled shielder, or if you want to give her some roll compression and lean into some of this freeze application. Again, completely up to you, but I think this leads you into talking about how she plays well with team synergy, and so I'm going to break down the different options now. Obviously, what we're going to start with is our basic free-to-play core team comp. This is a main DPS, sub-DPS, healer, and shielder. So on screen, we have the free-to-play core, Dan Hung, Saval, Natasha, and March 7th. The idea here is that you have two sources of damage doing whatever they need to do. Natasha and March 7th are going to pair really well here because Natasha has focused healings through her E and her AoE heals through her ult. Both of them have cleanses on their skills, and so they complement each other well because, for example, if March 7th is locked down, Natasha can get her out of that debuff and vice versa. At higher ascension, March can pull through with the longer shields and also substitute in some minor healing if needed. In this type of core, you would be using March as a stereotypical shielder. You wouldn't really lean too much into freeze application because, like I say, she does struggle with AoE shielding, and so you might find that you're getting out DPS'd if your healer also can't keep up. But, you know, it really depends on things like your builds. However, we can talk about where you can start to lean into either the more specific focused tank build, so with someone like Clara, or then additionally where you want to lean into something like a bit of a freeze application support with, you know, multiple tanks. So initially, going into these team comps, first and foremost, like I say, the danger duo of Clara and March 7th. With March's shields, you can actually drive damage towards Clara, which will cause Clara to trigger her counter attacks. As a domino effect, you can also get March's talent to trigger, helping her to deal out some good ice toughness depletion and damage where possible. In this type of team comp, what you are doing is you're actually maximizing March 7th's ability to apply a big shield, and so you're going to want to lean into mostly defense because basically basically, if you are starting to freeze off enemies, they're not going to be doing enough damage to actually give off counters. As such, when you're going for this build, this is where you would actually go for your main relics, and you'd be looking at, running mostly defense across your build. Alternatively, when you want to lean into building her for this high freeze application, what people can do is you can actually pair her up with Gepard or the Fire MC, and I appreciate this sounds a bit insane on the defensive side, but let me explain this real quick. Running March 7th in these double tank comps is actually very synergistic with her kit. Essentially, Gepard, obviously he only gets his shields off via his ultimate, and so having March there to apply initial coverage shields or even directed damage onto him makes it very easy for Gepard to run at full capacity, and then you can play into March 7th's freeze application more freely. Initially, with Fire MC, what you're doing is you're directing damage to him or her, and by directing damage this way, what you're doing is you're stacking up your magma stacks to improve their damage, and additionally, March is giving them a much stronger shield on self-application to them with additional taunt, and then the Fire MC doesn't need to cast their AoE shield as often because most of the damage should be directed towards them. Again, this also gives March 7th a bit of flexibility into opting in for something like an effect hit rate and energy regen rope for her ultimate usage. As such, you can see with March 7th that she has quite a flexible build path. She's not just your stereotypical one shield application, and so playing her with different teams outside of the stereotypical free-to-play core gives you some options and role diversity. As an overall summary, I'm going to cover her pros and cons. So for her pros, she does have a very big single target shield that is focused and can also cleanse. She can counter on any shield allies hit, and the counter does hit pretty often, giving you some nice decent ice toughness break to enemies with an ice weakness. She has strong synergy with other tanks to help maximize defensive utility for hard-hitting bosses. Additionally, she has a source of AoE freeze for her ult, and she's the perfect free-to-play ally if you have pulled Clara, because like I say, you get a copy of March the 7th for free just by playing the game. For cons, obviously when you are thinking of pro defense or pro freeze application, you do kind of want to pick one or the other, high shields or high freeze application and ultimate usage. Otherwise, you are risking just not getting enough out of your March 7th, and so while she does have both these playstyles, she can't effectively utilize both at once. Additionally, the shield that she does have only has a taunt, and it's not necessarily guaranteeing damage, so it's not a permanent source of peel. You can't just run a shield on her and then immediately expect all damage to run straight through her. All in all, she is a fantastic character. I really love her design. I really love her kit. I think she's a great character and she's well worth building. If you liked this video, please feel free to leave a like or a comment. I already said this, but you know the drill. If you did make it out this far, I really appreciate it. And also, oh yeah, I'm on Twitter now, so please feel free to follow me on Twitter, link in description. But other than that, I hope you have a great day. I hope you enjoy your trailblazing. Thanks and goodbye. I'll see you in the next one.